Hi, this is Randall Schwartz, host of Floss Weekly. This week, Aaron Newcomb joins me. We're going to be talking about PyPI, the repository for all your Python libraries. You're not going to want to miss this, so stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Floss Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Floss Weekly with Randall Schwartz and Aaron Newcomb. Episode 482, recorded May 2nd, 2018. PyPI. It's time for Floss Weekly, the show about free, libre, open source software. I am your host, Randall Schwartz, Merlin at Stonehenge.com, bringing you each week the movers, the shakers, the big projects, the little projects, projects you may be using every day and are totally unaware of it. That may be this one today, actually. Projects you might want to download right after this show and play with. Not so sure that would work for this one, but maybe. Joining me once again is my lovely and talented co-host, Aaron Newcomb. Aaron, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here.
And where are you speaking to us from? It looks a little unusual.
Yeah. So I'm at the Pearl. If you've never heard of it, it's kind of a conference hall, so to speak, downtown San Francisco. I'm here for a meeting today, and I asked around when I got here, do you just have like a little room I could maybe pop into for an hour or so while I do this show? And they're like, no, we just have this great big room, but we have the roof. So I was like, okay, I'll take the roof. So it's a little noisy up here. I apologize for that, but
and I hope you brought your sunscreen. Sunscreen's going to be needed for this show. Hopefully we'll get to dive you down right after the show so you're not to get too many of those SPFs or whatever you have to get, whatever they measure that thing in. And I'm also in a bit of an unusual place as well. So I have a membership in a worldwide condo association, and I have points that need to be disposed of, or I lose them. And one of the places is in Seaside, and so I'm actually at Seaside right now. It's a beautiful day outside, blue sky. I think it's only going to get up to about 65, though. It's actually rained a little bit a couple days ago, but I'm here for the week, and I'm having a great time. There's limited bandwidth going upstream, so I don't know if some of my video might cut out or some of my audio might cut out, but so far we've seen it's actually working reasonably well. So that's where I am today. I am near my home, about an hour and a half from my home, but not at home. But I still have the big Yeti, which is nice, and we will still see the Fez we actually already saw the Fez for the opening. I taped that out of order, so I forgot. So let's talk about today's project. So PyPI, P-Y-P-I. We're going to have Dustin Ingram and Ernest W. Durbin III come on and talk about that in a few minutes. But it's the only thing I can really understand about it. I'm not a Python guy. I've heard of Python. A lot of people talk about Python, not me. But it's the equivalent, and you can help me understand this, Aaron. It's the equivalent of the CPAN for Perl, but for Python. Is that accurate to say it that way?
Yeah. Well, that's how I use it. I use it all the time. I've never had a problem installing a Python package with PyPI. I don't know if it's PyPI or PyPI. I always say PyPI. But package installation, library installation for Python goes flawlessly with it. There's lots of different ways to install libraries for Python if you're interested in that. So maybe we can get into a little bit about that. Why not just run the setup.py that comes with pretty much every package that you want to run. So I want to know a little bit more. I just know that I go out, I use it, it works, my library's installed, and everything works correctly, and I don't have to worry about it. I hope that's the goal, because if it is, it's working great.
Yep. And so again, I don't know much about this. It sounds like the wind's getting to you a little bit, but so we'll see how this show works. Before we get started, though, I want to actually show an interesting graphic. And I'm sorry, John, for springing that on you, but I'll wait a second until you can pull that up. But okay, so the thing one of the things I understand about this, and we can fill this in, and then of course our guests are going to tell us a lot more about this, is that this is all the time when I'm using Python, people are telling me you type pip this and pip that. So is this the thing that connects to that? Aaron?
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting the wind again. So there's different ways. PyPI is one way, pip is another way, and then setup.py, just running setup.py is yet a third way. And I'm sure there's probably more. You could manually copy things into directories if you wanted to, if they didn't have to compile. So there's lots of different ways. and I want to know why PyPI. Why would I use PyPI as opposed to using any of the other methodologies?
Right, and what's really amazing is that very relevant XKCD this week just happens to be about this Python massive ecosystem. If you're watching the video, you can see it, or you just go to XKCD for this week. It's got pip, and it's got PyPI, and OS Python, and homebrew Python. I have exactly this diagram for all the different Perls that are installed in my system, so I can completely relate. So XKCD, thank you, Randall Monroe, for having a very timely, appropriate picture for us. Well, anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our guests. Let's start with Dustin Ingram. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Randall.
And where are you speaking to us from?
I'm based in Austin, Texas.
Austin, I've been there many times. OSCON was there for a couple of years, so I came down for that. I wonder when the next time I'm going to be there is. Probably sometime soon, but Austin's always a great place to go and come back to. Except the first time OSCON was there, it was during the late summer, and I have never experienced such magnificent amounts of heat, even in Phoenix. So
yeah, it gets a little warm here, yeah.
Yeah, and Austin is also great because it's sort of a sister city spiritually with Portland. I mean, you have Keep Austin Weird, we have Keep Portland Weird. You guys now have Voodoo Donuts, we have Voodoo Donuts. You know, so it's all working out. It's going to be kind of symmetrical, so it's really great. So I really appreciate that. And let's also bring on Ernest W. Durbin III. Ernest, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And where are you speaking to us from?
From my home in Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland, Ohio. Have I been there? Yes, I've been to was that where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is?
It is indeed.
Okay, so I've been there for that. And I think I've been there for a conference, and then I went to go see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as well. So this isn't about where are we and who are we. This is actually about Python and PyPI. Let's start with Dustin. Give us the sort of the high-level view. Did we describe it accurately?
Yeah, you kind of described it accurately. So PyPI is the Python package index, which is it's a repository for Python software. So what you described was PyPI, which, by the way, we usually like to say PyPI instead of PyPI. PyPI is a different project. It's self-hosting Python.
Sure.
So PyPI is the index, and tools like pip. Pip is a glorified installer and downloader. So it talks to PyPI, finds the package that you're trying to install, gets it, brings it down to your local system, and does everything necessary to make it available to you.
Is this like the most important repository for Python?
It is, and it's kind of the canonical, the only repository. And it's possible to run mirrors. There are a couple of mirrors that exist, but PyPI is the sort of de facto place to put Python software.
Is it set up the same way as the CPAN, where there's actually hundreds of mirrors around the world, and you have to select one or the closest one?
No, it's actually pretty central. Well, so it depends on how you think about this. Technically, It's pretty centralized. There's one PyPI, and it resolves to a single index. But we use a CDN, so technically you're hitting mirrors all around the world that are closest to you every time you use PyPI. But it's very centralized. It's unlike CPAN in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, of course, CPAN was created long before there were CDNs, so we really didn't have much of a choice. So how did this get started?
So PyPI first started as literally an index. So it would link to files hosted externally. So if you wanted to publish your Python software, you would go and put your distribution or whatever you have in some place on your machine or wherever on the internet you can put it. And then you'd send a link to PyPI and it would exist there. And it existed like that for a little while. And then slowly that became pretty untenable. So it became actual repository for source code. It would host the source code itself. And my timeline is a little rusty, so I'm relatively new to the project. PyPI has been around for 15 years now. And wow. I joined the project about 2 years ago. So sort of towards the point where PyPI existed, was really well depended on by a lot of the Python community. It was the place that people would go to install software, but before this launch that we're about to talk about.
Oh, cool! Even better. We got a scoop coming up. So I seem to remember, and I'm probably mispronouncing this because I can't remember exactly, but there's something like the original sort of Python pointer repository was something like the Vaults of Carnassus or something.
Yeah, I think it was the Vaults of Parnassus, which might still be available via archive.org. But yeah, that was sort of back when it was just links to external files, I think.
So is this the heir apparent to that?
It sort of is that instance of the repository before it was really hosting its own files.
So you've been involved with the project for a couple of years. What brought you to that, and what kind of roles do you have with the project?
Yeah, so I joined the project about 2 years ago as a volunteer contributor, and I was attracted to the project because what was happening at that time was there was basically a full stack rewrite happening of PyPI. The old PyPI that had been in service for quite a while, which we'll call, Ernest and I will both call that legacy PyPI, which is, as of Monday, it doesn't exist anymore. It had been in use for a really long time, and it had predated a lot of the Python web frameworks and things like that, which we know about today. And it was kind of getting old and janky, and Ernest has spent a lot of his time working to maintain that service and keep it up and running. But at the same time, Donald Stuft, who's sort of a prolific author in the Python packaging community, was working to replace that PyPI with something new. And his goal was to sort of fix a lot of problems that he saw with the legacy PyPI. And so I joined the project because, it was basically PyPI reimagined with all best practices and, things like tests and that kind of stuff. And so it was really nice to work on, and I was interested in contributing to it. And now here I am, PyPI maintainer.
Cool. Well, let's let Ernest talk for a second since you mentioned his name. Ernest, what's your relationship to the project?
Sure. So in 2013, I joined in to help operate and maintain the Python Software Foundation's infrastructure. And so this is python.org, mail.python.org, the wiki, various sites around basically anything that the Python community needed. And one of the projects that included was PyPI. And at that time, PyPI was in a rather tumultuous state. It lived on one little virtual machine in a cluster at an open source lab in Oregon, and had frequent downtime. And so I got involved primarily on the infrastructure side of things initially. So this was just the servers that run Postgres and storage and the web apps and such. And over time, worked on improving the code base and supporting the community when PyPI wasn't doing what it needed them to do. So about, I guess, 5 to 6 years now, I've been in some way contributing to the maintenance and infrastructure behind PyPI.
And so this is clearly something that is essential for people to be able to share code with. Is there any sort of security or vetting that's done by the uploads?
No. So right now, anything that's uploaded to PyPI is available for download. The security and vetting aspect is something that's been discussed quite often, and ultimately, there's the resources available as far as what it would take to screen packages and what it would take to curate packages. Sort of gets out of hand. There are somewhere around 140,000 projects on PyPI, and close to or more than 1 million releases. So that's quite a bit of software to do anything in an automated fashion. Additionally, the old code base, the stuff that we were working with for so long, didn't really offer a good environment for implementing a complex feature like that. Currently, the new project, Warehouse, which is now the PyPI, like Dustin said, as of Monday, the new project lays much of the foundation needed to start adding features to PyPI that can address things like that. Previously, it was just sort of difficult to work on. There were very few tests. It was very easy to break or change behavior unintentionally. So we're looking forward to a lot of things that we might be able to do now that we have a single code base.
Yeah, and security is always going to be a big problem when you have a repository because anybody can just upload anything. I know we had a problem back in the CPAN about 10 years ago where a guy during the install script had a phone home in there, and that was just such a blazing violation of ethics and principles that, but he couldn't understand why that was a problem. And not only that, he phoned home when you did an install, and then, of course, we typically do installs as root. He did an eval of whatever text came back, and I went, "Oh my God, that's just crazy, insane." So it took him a while to figure out that no, that was not the right thing to do. So, anyway, I'm kind of scrambling for more Python questions because I don't know. Oh, what current web framework are you using now for the new architecture?
Sure. So the new project is implemented using Pyramid, which comes from the Plone project. Pyramid is another Python web framework. It's not one of the sort of top Python web frameworks, but it is something that offers a ton of flexibility and sort of, I guess, precision in how we deal with requests and responses that is really beneficial for the way that PyPI is designed. It's sort of designed to be as much as possible operating out of that CDN. So we don't have, it's orders of magnitude fewer requests that actually reach the backend.
Sure.
And doing sort of that level of caching and the cache handling and such required, pretty finicky little changes that other Python web frameworks weren't quite as easy to perform those in.
Yeah, well, I know Aaron's got a few questions coming up here. If we can sort of break it out in between the wind.
Yeah. Hopefully the wind isn't too bad. So you already answered one question for me. Is pip part of PyPI, or are they two separate things? Because you use pip to install things. If I understand how this works correctly, it goes out to PyPI. I'm really going to try to start saying PyPI. So I apologize if I forget. So it goes out there to the repository, finds the package you want to install in the index, and then downloads it and installs it. Correct? But I guess so. The question is that the correct way that this works for people that don't know how this type of software works with the language that they choose? And then number two, is pip part of the PyPI project, or is it two separate things?
Sure. So the Python package index is not particular as to who accesses it or how. And so any client is capable of using the index to find a Python package, find the latest version and install it, or to determine previous releases and such. Pip is the de facto client, and pip is available with nearly every, or not guaranteed, but almost certainly with every modern Python installation will have pip available. There are other clients as well that can be used, but most of them end up at some point calling to PyPI to install. Pip doesn't require PyPI. You can use pip with a private index or some other index that offers the same interface as PyPI. And PyPI and pip live under the Python Packaging Authority, which is sort of a loosely governed collection of folks working in the packaging space for Python. So there's quite a bit of overlap in the people that are working on various projects in the PyPA, but they are separate projects that sort of live under the same loose governance.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. And then the other question I had is, I mentioned, I think in the opening, I've also installed packages just by downloading from, a GitHub repository somewhere and running setup.py. Should I do that let's say I was new to this? I mean, is that something I should do, or should I avoid that? Is there an advantage to actually using pip and PyPI as opposed to just downloading the package directly from GitHub?
Yeah, there are certainly advantages, particularly with the latest format for Python packages, which are called wheels. Wheels are a ready-to-install version of a Python package. And one of the biggest advantages to using a wheel versus using setup.py is that setup.py is very similar to what Randall was mentioning earlier in having an install script that's executed. And so arbitrary code can be executed when installing via setup.py, whereas if you install via a wheel, The wheel is basically just a zip file that will be unzipped into the appropriate place. So pip knows how to take that, put it on your file system so that you can import it and start using that module.
Cool. And then how many packages are there in the repository? I apologize, I was working on some stuff on my laptop. I might have missed that question if it was already asked.
Just under 140,000 projects with 958,000 releases currently, and 1.2 million files.
Holy moly. How are you able to maintain all that? Is this all done automatically? I mean, what is the mechanism that's going on behind the scenes? You started to mention some of it, but what's going on behind the scenes to be able to manage that many files, that many versions, that many packages?
Sure. So we have a database. We use Postgres. We recently upgraded to Postgres 10 as part of this this new launch of the brand new PyPI. That basically has metadata about the files stored. That metadata is specified in a PEP, which is a Python enhancement proposal, which sort of says these are the metadata that you can have on a package or a project or a release. So we store that, and then the actual files are stored in Amazon S3, and we heavily leverage the CDN for delivering those files. As a matter of fact, the files themselves are always served directly from S3 via the CDN. Previously, they used to all be on one disk, and they've gotten quite large since. So we're using pretty much modern storage and databases for these things. The web app accepts uploads, and the web app sort of serves the requests that are necessary for metadata, for release indexes, etc.
Cool. And what about, here's something I've always been curious about is what about updating? Obviously you mentioned security before as being one of the reasons that people should use PyPI instead of just downloading the software directly and installing it. But that also applies to updates because things can get out of date. There might be new vulnerabilities discovered. I mean, is there any way to automate updating all of my libraries, all my Python libraries, either using pip or PyPI? Do I get notified? Is there a way to get notified about those things? How does it handle that?
Dustin, do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, I can take this. So right now there's not really a great way to say like, hey, this package on PyPI is vulnerable, or it has it's deprecated in some way. So right now, no, there's no way to sort of notify users. There is a way to upgrade all your packages across the system with pip. You can just pip upgrade everything. But right now, that's one of the things that we're sort of looking forward to with the new PyPI is that we have a little more flexibility and freedom to implement new features like this. So one thing that has been requested a lot is the ability to mark a package as deprecated or with a security vulnerability. And now that we have shut down legacy and we're sort of more free to do whatever we want, we can actually implement this feature. And so, yeah, that might be a feature that you see soon is the ability to tell the users a maintainer can say to a user, this package or this version of this package is vulnerable and you shouldn't use it.
Yeah, because that would be super helpful, I know, for me, because it's one of those things you just don't even think about, really. You install the library, everything's working, and you don't go back and look at it. But it's a big issue, especially for big development teams, to try to stay on top of this stuff. What about integrations, like with IDEs or other software? I mean, are there integrations available? Like I use Atom, for example, quite frequently. Is there an integration there that could either notify me that a package is out of date or make it easier to get the package installed on my system? Maybe this is outside the bounds of what you guys work on, but I'm just kind of curious where you guys are integrated with other software.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard. It is a little bit out bounds of what we are working on. So that would be some third-party tools. And there's a lot of third-party, there's third-party mirrors and such of PyPI. And they all use, we have a variety of APIs that make it possible for those third-party tools to exist. So it would definitely be possible to write an Atom plugin that is able to hit PyPI. Maybe if you're editing a requirements.txt, it could highlight like a vulnerable version. But I don't think anything like that exists right now.
Cool. And I know we talked about the number of packages that you're currently maintaining, but what about the throughput? I mean, because Python's, I don't know, I think it's probably the second most used. I haven't looked at. There's all kinds of these studies come out from all over the place. Like what's the most popular language going on right now? And a lot of times it comes down to Java just because it's everywhere. But then Python seems to have been slowly creeping up over the years. And so I'm kind of curious, what kind of throughput do you guys on a daily basis, or I don't know if you can share that, do you guys have to maintain just as everyone is installing libraries, all day, every day?
Yeah, we can absolutely share it. I think Ernest has the numbers.
I did. I prepared these. So this is in the last 24 hours. We did 13.5 million requests to the back end. We did 300 million requests at the front end for the actual index itself, and did 2.7 terabytes of data for the index. For the file hosting itself, we did 57 terabytes yesterday, or in the last 24 hours, with about 55 million requests. So it's substantial, and the bulk of the requests and data transit happens at the CDN, but we still do a pretty good amount of traffic to the back ends. And we do it with about 60 milliseconds.
Yeah, that's a crazy amount of traffic. I mean, Dustin, how do you guys, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I'm sure probably we were going to touch on this later, but how do you pay for that much bandwidth? I mean, do you guys have a backer, a wealthy sugar daddy that is putting up the money for this?
That's a great question. So PyPI exists almost entirely on donated infrastructure. So the backend services are entirely donated at the moment by AWS, and a large part of the reason why we're able to handle that much traffic is because of the CDN. So Fastly is our CDN. They donate a lot of traffic to us just to be able to run PyPI. We pay nothing to them, and they're an amazing sponsor of the service. It would not exist without them. We have a lot of other in-kind sponsors as well, but those are the two big ones that make it possible to handle that kind of traffic.
That's awesome. There's just so much stuff involved in there to make that all happen. I know that part of the reason that the CPAN can work is because essentially each of the CPAN mirrors donate, their own traffic, so that it's not like you're totally swamped. One of the things I don't know much about Python, so I'm guessing at a few things here. I presume that a package can define that it depends on other packages, and maybe in fact, in particular, a range of versions on that. Is that true?
Yes, that's definitely true.
Okay, well, in other systems like this, and particularly in Dart right now, since Dart's going through a 1.0 to 2.0 revolution, and a lot of the packages aren't set up for Dart 2.0 yet, you end up with upgrade hell, where you get a package that needs to have version 5 of this other thing, but version 5 of that other thing needs the version that's not compatible with the thing I'm trying to upgrade. Have you seen that in package upgrades?
Yeah, I think that doesn't happen super often in the Python ecosystem. It definitely is possible. I'm not really sure what to attribute to why that's not a bigger problem, but one of the causes of that problem right now is that pip itself doesn't have a dependency resolver, so it can't determine the solution to that problem, basically, if they both are specifying some range, which version should get installed. And it does like a really naive algorithm for figuring out, like, okay, this version might work and I'll just install it, because usually things are roughly backwards compatible. Sometimes that causes problems. There are some smart people right now working on adding a dependency resolver to pip, so that problem should be a little easier to mitigate. But yeah, I mean, anytime you have the ability to specify sub-dependencies like that, it's always a possibility, and it's still possible that there could be incompatibilities there.
And I've heard there's this thing called Python 3 that's different from Python 2. How does PyPI deal with that?
Well, PyPI doesn't care a whole lot. I mean, it just takes whatever software people want to publish. So if you want to publish a package that's only compatible on Python 2.6, then you can do that. Your users probably aren't going to like that, but you can publish a source distribution, which is basically a single source of Python code. And usually people, when they publish a source distribution, it's compatible with both Python 2 and Python 3.
And
PyPI
how about...
does offer,
go ahead, sorry.
So PyPI does offer a piece of metadata as part of the index called Python requires that can allow you to specify like explicitly what versions of Python a given package is installable under.
Sure.
And so there are some tools and such. So it doesn't go all the way into saying like these are the requirements of the package, but there are some high level things you can say to specify this is only usable for Python 3.5 and up, or a range of Pythons, etc.
And I heard earlier that you had a web uploader to allow new packages to be added. Is there also a command line version, I presume?
It's only command line. We removed the web uploader after, I think, the 5th or 6th spam attack. People were using to upload packages that way.
And so if I have a current version of a package that I can see in PyPI, am I also likely to see older versions as well?
Yeah, so PyPI, I'll take it. PyPI will display every historical release for that package that has ever existed, as long as the maintainer hasn't explicitly deleted it. So yeah, you can go to PyPI and visit a project page. You'll see the latest version, and you'll see how to install it, and a description for the project. But you'll also be able to go back in time and see, every release that was ever made, what version it was, and when it was first published.
Yeah, in the CPAN world, we have a typical behavior is to have maybe the last 5 versions or so on the CPAN or whatever the author chooses, but it's typically some number in that area. And we have a separate mechanism called backpan that actually has every version ever published but it's only it's not mirrored. It's only in one location, so it's a little more crazy that way. So the author can decide. So the author still can decide, though, that if there's a version that has security vulnerabilities, you can remove that from PyPI, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And yeah, the author totally gets the ability to remove the project if they want to as well. The one thing that PyPI does really enforce for authors is that they can't publish a version of a given package and push a file that is officially that version and then go back and change that someday, so that you're not installing version 6 of whatever and then someday that you're installing some other distribution.
You may have addressed this already when you're talking about the sponsorship and support, but I understand there's something about the Mozilla Open Source Support Award.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about Mozilla. So the reason that you're probably talking to us today is because that full stack rewrite that I was talking about way at the very beginning, which first got me hooked on the project, was kind of bound to not happen in a timely fashion. Donald was sort of just working on it with what time he had, and it was attracting a couple contributors, but not a whole lot. And the timeline for it was kind of undefined. So what we did, the Python community has a packaging working group. It's a bunch of folks that are sort of just working on making packaging work well for the Python community. What we opted to do is apply for an award from Mozilla. Mozilla gives out the Mozilla Open Source Support Awards, and Mozilla was happy to give us a bunch of money to basically finish PyPI. So they gave us an award, and it was able to hire Ernest, myself, our project manager Sumana, and our designer Nicole to work on the project for about a little over 5 months, full time.
Awesome. And are you getting also, I presume the source for PyPI is available like on GitHub or something. Are you getting other contributions or people contributing things to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have over 100 unique contributors at this point for a project that's only a couple of years old. That's pretty good. And definitely part of our effort with the MOSS grant or award was to try and collect some new contributors. So it's been great. We've had a lot of new contributors come and join the project, merge PRs, and part of the reason that was really even possible is because we had Sumana is a really excellent project manager. She's a really great community organizer, and she got a lot of people interested and on board, but also, just a nice modern code base that's depended on by literally anyone that uses Python is kind of attractive to contributors as well. So yeah, it's been great.
Great. And at Python conferences, does PyPI get just a BOF or does it get a whole track?
This year, we're going to do a BOF, a birds of feather, and just sort of talk about the future of Python packaging. So not just PyPI, but that will probably be something we'll talk about a lot because people have a lot of ideas about what we can do now with the new code base. But we also will do a development sprint. So we'll spend 4 days. I don't know how many people I'll be there, just working on packaging stuff, including PyPI, full-time for 4 days, and see what we can make. Some interesting stuff has come out of the sprints in the past, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome. One of the problems with the CPAN installer, MCPAN or any of them actually, since they all do exactly the same thing, is the lack of ability to uninstall a module. Can pip uninstall something?
Oh yeah, pip has no problem uninstall. Well, pip almost always has no problem uninstalling whatever you have installed.
I'm sure you'd end up with a situation though where sometimes two different packages both claim a particular path, and they both want to own that path, and uninstalling it then is a little bit tricky, right?
I mean, you can really only have one package installed at a time. There's lots of other things you can do with sort of virtual environments in Python, but yeah, you're never really going to have two versions of the same package installed.
Well, not two versions of the same package, but like, say, package A wants to install stuff in user lib whatever, and package B also wants to install stuff in user lib whatever, and they happen to have an overlapping path.
I think it's pretty well partitioned in Python. That's not a problem that occurs very often. What's usually a problem, I think, is things are getting left behind and not fully getting uninstalled. But it's pretty rare. I think pip does a pretty good job of taking care of users with that regard.
Awesome, awesome. So where is this going in the future? And oh, wait, before we get to that, how internationalized is it? Do you have translations?
It was one thing that we hoped to sort of include in the Mozilla grant or the Mozilla award, but it was not a part of it. We don't have translations. We are sort of focusing on in the future on adding some internationalization to the package index, but yeah, it's still undefined. Looking for people to help us out with it.
And so, what other kinds of people are you looking for to fulfill your roadmap, and also what's on the roadmap?
Yeah, so some of the things on the roadmap are just some new features. So one of the things we were able to ship right before we officially launched was something that users have been asking for a long time, which was the ability to write their descriptions as markdown on PyPI and not restructured text, which was kind of the Python go-to markup format. And so one of the things that the new code base let us do is sort of, it wasn't trivial, but we were able to add that feature. Some other things, people have lots of ideas about stuff that they want to add to PyPI now. There are ideas about, like I said before, adding notifications of security vulnerabilities and that kind of thing. There's this idea of doing sort of a staged release where you can, because Ernest was saying, not only can you publish a source distribution, but you can publish wheels that are custom built for different platforms as well. So one of the things that users have been asking for is the ability to sort of queue up all the releases, be able to check it, run tests on it, whatever, and then actually publish it. Right now on PyPI, once you upload it, it's there, it's published. That it's out into the world. So that's another feature that we're hoping to add. A lot of the work that I'm getting excited about doing is new APIs. So we have some kind of old janky APIs. We have some XML RPC APIs that are kind of a nightmare to maintain and also still really depended on by a lot of people running mirrors and that kind of thing. The future of PyPI will include a new API for all of these types of services to be able to interact with it, as well as things like API keys to do stuff not authenticated as your main account and so on.
So, I mean, if I can ask a kind of a rudimentary question, it's just something I've always been interested in. I mean, there are some core packages that come with Python, right, when you install it. But are those also maintained in PyPI, or are those separate? I'm thinking of things like system and OS and time, those libraries that you don't have to install anything for. Are those maintained as part of the core Python files, or are they maintained in PyPI?
Yeah, sure, they're part of... jump in real quick. They're part of Python core. The joke is that the BDFL, Gita Van Rossum, doesn't need PyPI because everything he needs, he just puts in the standard library. But I'll let Ernest talk too.
Oh, sure. So, I mean, historically, many standard library modules begin their life on PyPI. As a matter of fact, if you sort of search around, you'll find, a release of something that's now in the standard library on PyPI. But yeah, they're maintained as part of the standard library in the CPython code base.
Cool. I'll just ask one more question, and then I'll let Randall wrap up. And that is, and you kind of addressed this a little bit, I think, Dustin, in your previous answer. But I am curious about all these different Python platforms that are coming out. I do a lot of stuff on like Arduino and Raspberry Pi, and there's versions of Python you can run natively on Arduino platforms and other microcontrollers and all this stuff. So I'm just kind of curious, is there any work, or maybe you can elaborate on your previous answer about the work that's being done either to test or to cordon off certain libraries so that you don't end up installing the wrong one for the wrong platform? Dustin?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question. So the idea is that like you would have sort of an audited set of packages, and so you don't accidentally install, like mistype something or fat finger something. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. And there's just different, when you're dealing, especially on a microcontroller platform, dependencies and things like that, you can't necessarily, there's no file system sometimes, you can't necessarily assume that, something's going to be there. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that PyPI is doing natively, and the answer can be no, that's fine. I'm just wondering if there's anything that they're doing to try to address some of those newer platforms that are coming up, especially around the microcontroller space.
Yeah, I have a little bit of familiarity with like the MicroPython community. So they have something they call UPIP, which is like MicroPip basically, and they do some stuff to make Python packages installing more lightweight. But yeah, I'm not really sure what PyPI can do to make that better. Besides, one thing that has been talked about is the ability to publish wheels for those type of architectures on PyPI. Right now, it's kind of not possible. So you wouldn't be able to build a wheel that doesn't require compilation and publish it to PyPI and then install it to your microarchitecture. But it's something that could be supported in the future. Someone just has to write a specification for it.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I'm going to ask you probably the most difficult question that I ever ask my guests, which is because it requires you to do set math. So think of all the things you wanted to talk about today, and think of all the things we actually asked you. Subtract, and did we miss anything?
Well, we talked about our sponsors, and we talked about Mozilla, which are the two big things we really want to talk about. We gave a plug for our excellent project manager, who honestly, this project would not have been possible without her. So applause to her. And I don't think I have anything else that I really wanted to hit. Ernest?
We talked briefly about Python conferences and about sprints. And in 1 week from today, I'm not sure when this will air specifically, but 1 week from today, PyCon is happening in Cleveland. And that's where some of those sprints and the birds of a feather that Dustin was talking about will occur.
Well, this actually goes out into the CDNs just a few hours from when we tape this. So, yes, it will be there. So 1 week will actually be a fairly accurate number, depending on when people download their podcasts, actually, though. So it depends on what day you're listening to it, I guess. And if you're like my friend who's really OCD and won't listen to any podcast out of order, and he's still listening to Floss Weekly from 3 years ago. So, no, it won't be accurate for him, but I forgive him for that. So, two final questions. Oh, my God, I already know the answer to one of them. What's your favorite scripting language? That's right. I went off. We know that one.
It's Python.
Ruby, right? Ruby. And what's your favorite text editor for each of you?
I'm a Vim user.
Okay.
I really like Bash in addition to Python. I'm not sure if it fully qualifies. And I'm also a Vim user.
Okay.
Yay, Vim.
Aaron's happy. I'm always a little bit. I like Emacs, and I also now like VS Code. So, and actually, VS Code I think has pretty good support for Python. So, if you wanted to pop in there, it sounds like a good thing. Of course, Vim probably has similar support since it's been around for a long time. Well, guys, it's been great having you on the show, talking about things I'm very unfamiliar with. So, I had a good chance. I learned a few things, which is even better. And now people will be more aware of the upcoming work required for PyPI, and also aware of the upcoming conference. So thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Randall.
Awesome. So that was Dustin Ingram, let's see if we get this right, and Ernest W. Durbin III. So what do you think there, Aaron?
These shows are always interesting because I get to ask some of the things that, I just take for granted and just it just works. This is one of those projects that just works for me. You do pip install, whatever the name of the library is, it just works. You don't really think about what's going on in the background,
Right.
PyPI or whatever else, right? It's pretty simple. Things right over the years. It's good to hear that they're upgrading the framework and that they've done the rewrite so that they can start adding new things like the new API. I think that's really exciting, at least for me. But it's still not quite as powerful as CPAN. Having used both, having come from Perl and then migrated to Python, it's not quite as powerful. But it's one of those things that just works. You just run it, it works. You don't really have to worry about it. So, and anybody that starts on Python and gets past the hello world script and wants to integrate anything else is going to start using PyPI right away. So, it's good to talk to these guys and figure out what's going on because this isn't something that we get to do all the time.
Well, next time you have a really good connection, we're going to have to discuss why the PyPI is not as good as CPAN, because now I've got points I can deliver if that's true. CPAN's been around, I think, for a bit longer, and I think there's probably a little bit more flexibility in how it all works. Like, for example, the FreeBSD people developed a way to install CPAN modules that didn't have a corresponding port and package, such that it looked like a port, so it could be uninstalled and have dependencies and things like that. So that was really clever to build that on top of the normal cpan.pm module for that. So I'll have to discuss that some other day, though, when people aren't walking behind you and the wind isn't up and everything. So say hi to those people behind you there.
Yeah, I think they're setting up for lunch over here, so I apologize for that.
We'll wrap real quick here. Not a problem. Right down on the tail end of our show here. So because it's the tail end of our show, it's time to talk about the upcoming guests. So next, I'm gonna scare everybody. Next Thursday, we do not have Wednesday. We were bumped a day later because of some other big thing happening, and they never tell me what it is. But some big things happen next Wednesday. So we're on next Thursday. We're going to be talking about Seagull, which is SEAGL. It's a grassroots technical conference dedicated to spreading awareness and knowledge about the GNU Linux community and free libre open source software and hardware. It's actually a free conference happening in Seattle, Washington, which I'm definitely going to attend. It's November 9th and 10th coming up. And we're going to have one of the lead organizers talk to us about how that conference came about. It's been going for 5 years. And also about the kinds of things that they have there. So it'll be really cool. The Lounge is after that. It's a self-hosted IRC client. It's a fork of the Shout IRC client. So we'll talk a little bit about how that changed. HubbleStack is a modular open source security compliance framework, similar to what we had a few weeks ago. The project provides on-demand, profile-based auditing, real-time security event notifications, automated remediation, alerting, and reporting. React PHP is a low-level library for event-driven programming in PHP. At its core is an event loop on which it provides low-level utilities such as streams, async DNS, network client server, HTTP client server, interactions with processes. Sounds like a lot of fun. RB Spy, after that, which lets you profile Ruby processes that are already running. You give it a PID, and it starts profiling, and it's a sampling profiler, which means you can even use it in production because it's only going to take little tiny time slices out of your app. Keycloak, open source identity and access management for modern applications and services. Okay, all those were there last week when I talked, but we've added another guest to our list, the Pillar Project. Pillar Project is one of those blockchain sort of things. They are building the world's best cryptocurrency and token wallet. It'll become the dashboard for your digital life. That's a grand claim. And they appear to be really interested in solving some of the issues like people not having access to your wallet without you being around. So we're always looking for more guests, though. So if you go to twit.tv/floss, the homepage for this show, there's a spreadsheet link from there called Upcoming Guests. Be sure to look at that. And if a project you want on this show is not listed there, please have the project leader or community coordinator contact me, Merlin, at stonehenge.com. Please don't just use Twitter or something, okay? I hate it when people try to just tweet at me and try to get on the show that way. Although, hey, we've done it. It's happened. So I'm not ruling it out entirely, okay? But I prefer mail, Merlin at stonehenge.com. We have a live stream at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, typically Wednesdays. It will be Thursday next week. Then we're back to our Wednesday schedule. Live.twit.tv. We took a number of questions. Actually, this time the number was 0. No, we didn't take any questions. Okay, so the number of questions we took this week was 0 from the stream. Join us next week, and hopefully you can pitch in a few questions. You can follow us at Floss Weekly on Google+, or at Floss Weekly on Twitter. You can follow me at Randall L. Schwartz on Google+, or at Merlin, M-E-R-L-Y-N, on Twitter. I am going to be at the Red Hat Summit in San Francisco next week, and we do have a meetup scheduled. The meetup will be on May 1st. I'll also be tweeting this and Google Plusing this, but May 1st, 6:30 p.m., meet in the lobby of the Worldmark San Francisco at 590 Bush Street. So if you want to hang out with some of my other friends from other realms and just want to come by and say hello, we're not actually staying there. We're going to try to find a restaurant that can accommodate whoever shows up. So don't presume that you can come in at 7 and see us, because we'll be gone as soon as we got a quorum, okay? And I'm also going to be at the Pearl Conference in Salt Lake City coming up in June, and I have a bunch of other stuff on the table. Cruise in July, All Things Open in October, but I don't have those all on my list. I'm just making that up from what I remember. Aaron, anything you want to plug today?
Yeah, 2 quick things, and they're both Maker Faire related. So I will be at the Bay Area Maker Faire in the middle of, like May 18th, I think. I'll be there on Saturday, and I will be talking about my book, Linux for Makers. I'll be doing a little talk on why Linux is important for makers to know and how they can makers can use Linux to be more efficient when they're building their projects. So that's the first one. That's the big Maker Faire in San Mateo here in California. And then the other one is the Maker Faire that I set up and run. It's a little bit smaller. But it's used to be called the Benicia Mini Maker Faire, and now it is. We just changed the name to Solano County Mini Maker Faire because we're moving the event over to Solano County Fairgrounds. So we're opening it up for the entire county. It's going to be a big deal, and that is on June 30th and July 1st. It's Saturday and Sunday, so we'll be there. So if you want to go to those events, highly check them out. If you want to come meet me or talk to me. If you're going to be at the Maker Faire, especially in San Mateo, because it's so big, just come to my talk. I think I'll be hanging out in some building doing book signings or something like that too. So just come find me. I'd love to meet you. Just mention that you're a FLOSS or a FLOSS listener, or even a Twit listener, viewer, whatever you are, participant in some way, and love to talk to you.
Well, Aaron, I want to thank you for braving that bright sunshine. It's such a trooper to be able to, be out there in the bright sunlight.
Well, I'm going to go back inside to this conference, and people are going to think that I am related to Donald Trump somehow, because I'm going to be all orange from the tan that I got while I was up here doing the show. For better or worse, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think you're up there long enough for that, but that's okay. At least the wind was like only sometimes there. Yeah, so that was not bad. It was not bad. So, and thanks again for providing your Python knowledge, because again, my Python knowledge is only limited to how I know it's different from Perl. So,
this was an easy one. I mean, because we really didn't even get into Python. It was more about about PyPI, and like I said, it's so easy to use. I mean, if you're new to Python or haven't done programming in other languages, you don't know some of the hardship that we've put up with over the years from these types of systems. So it's a breeze.
And we'll be coming back next week on Thursday, not on Wednesday. If you're trying to watch the live stream, please don't be confused. It'll be the Seagull Show. And I'll actually be coming from my hotel room in San Francisco. So hopefully we'll get good bandwidth there, because I'm always subject to whatever they provide. But anyway, thanks, Aaron, once again. And we'll see you all again next week on FLOSS Weekly.